Good morning. It's Tuesday?
Tuesday.
It's Tuesday. It's SJU. Roth, still out on assignment. She's murdering people. Joining me, Dan Murrell, Billy Business, and with a bowl full of Lucky Charms like the damn pro she is, Roxy Striar is here. Thanks for joining.
Isn't it so good in the mic when I'm just crunching down?
Crunching?
Absolutely.
That is
Look,
pro.
it's a slow news day, so we are going to do a 10-minute segment in the middle of this show where you just ASMR chew Lucky Charms in the microphone. It might goose views. I don't know.
Dan, do you remember the song? I feel like if anybody at the table, it's
Frosted
iffy.
Lucky Charms. The
Yeah!
Hard stars, horseshoes. Yeah.
So good.
Did
they let him
as my
have-
mom uncovers more of our Irish heritage, I have more and more mixed feelings about it.
Did they let him have the
understand.
cereal? Did we ever figure out as a society why there was a trend in the 80s, 90s?
Where you
that-
wouldn't let the mascot have the cereal?
Yeah.
No, he was a proponent of the cereal.
Yeah.
He was introducing the cereal. You're thinking of the Trix Rabbit, who could
Yeah,
not have
the
the
rabbit
cereal.
could not have the
Also,
cereal.
like-
Crisp,
Yeah, they had to
couldn't
steal.
have-
It was like
bear- yeah.
drugs. That,
Yeah.
You know, like Barney Rubble and Fred Flintstone always fighting over the cereal. Like it was a very conflicted.
Or I
thing.
don't know if you remember, was it Honeycrisp cereal? They had the frog, and he would
Honey Smacks.
Honey Smacks. Thank you.
I don't remember
and
Honey Smacks.
Honey Smacks apparently made you very strong and violent.
Oh.
Like he would just eat Honey Smacks and then just punch something into the sun.
I mean, I was poor, so I had generic brand everything, but I just saw the commercials.
Was there generic brand Lucky Charms?
Oh, there's generic
Oh, yeah.
brand everything.
Oh, yeah, there are.
Yeah, they're on the bottom shelf of the grocery.
Happy Charms.
Like,
Happy Charms.
what are the marshmallows shaped as?
Who knows? I don't
red-
think you can
they're just
copyright
like
a shape.
round.
Yeah, they're
Red
round.
red dirigibles.
Yeah.
Yay.
All of this is relevant.
Or like a star or something.
Guys, not just cereal talk today.
Yeah.
We're talking about a lot of things. We're gonna kick around a little bit, little open review, open chat about that they're solo. We're gonna talk about some letters that Alan Rickman wrote. Rest in peace, sir. We're gonna talk about Zack Snyder's next dream project that we're all very excited about, and we're also gonna get into a couple of fan questions that we had left over from Friday. But first,
Yay!
this just broke as we were counting down, so I did want to touch on it a little bit because this is gonna be the news for like a
Ever.
week. Roseanne made Roseanne Barr made a star of the show, Roseanne, made a racist tweet, and instead of apologizing, just said, "I'm leaving Twitter."
No, she did apologize.
Well, she
apologized.
apologized. Yeah, she
And
apologized.
is leaving Twitter.
Yeah, and is leaving Twitter. Sorry.
Well,
Yes, she
She's gonna have a lot of free time on her hands
because ABC has
canceled
canceled the show outright. You've got the statement up. if you
Yeah,
wouldn't
it's
mind
a
reading,
very
sir.
brief statement from Channing Dungy, I apologize, president of ABC Entertainment. Very short, as they are generally. Roseanne's Twitter statement is abhorrent, repugnant, and inconsistent with our values, and we have decided to cancel her show. That's it.
So that's
Do you think she found that out via phone call?
Probably.
Yeah.
No, she might have found it out via Twitter.
yeah, quite honestly.
Well, Wanda Sykes earlier today had tweeted that she would not be returning.
She was
to
a
the
consulting
show.
producer
She was a
and walked
consulting
away.
producer. Whitney Cummings, who was a consulting producer, had already left the show. I mean, there was obviously, as is par for the course, if you remember back when she was on the air the first time, there was a constant revolving door of writers, producers, so that's nothing new for the show. But this, it's a bit different.
Yeah.
There was no Twitter back in the 90s or the 80s. Thank goodness.
Yeah, so this is huge news because Roseanne was not, like an experiment for them where it's like, we'll give it some time and we'll see how it does. Like this out the gate was a big hit. So I mean, this is a quick decision, quick turnaround with pulling
The number
Roseanne
show
off
on
the air.
TV. It's making more money. It's got more eyes on it. Whether you like the guy or not, this is not a political statement, but what's the over-under on whether Trump tweets about this or not?
100%.
Over.
It's going to
100%
happen.
over.
If it hasn't happened
He
yet,
may
I'm
be
very
like
shocked
right
about
now.
it.
We should just have
He's a
someone
big
like
Roseanne, the
Yeah.
show. He's a big fan of the show.
Ryan's
Of course
checking.
he is.
We need to have a Ryan is checking on Twitter cam where it's just him in a corner just waiting, just refreshing Twitter, waiting for
Yeah, I
that
don't
tweet.
think you can be the studio that puts out Blackish and then also just let a tweet like that slide. But I mean, like
Even when it's making you that much money?
even when you take away morals out of this completely, which they usually do, just look at it from a pure dollars and cents. Look how many advertisers would walk based on what was going to happen. And you're not just talking about advertisers for Roseanne. Those are advertisers for any sports that ABC has, any of their other big shows. You're talking about a massive backlash there that's not worth it for one show.
And what she said wasn't, I hate that this is a term, but this is kind of a term. I made it up, but this is the world we live in. It wasn't wink, wink racist.
No.
Which is unfortunately a thing now. Where
It wasn't
like,
grandpa.
It's racist, but
No,
it's
it
not.
was
It was horrifically like 50 years ago racist.
Yeah.
And you can't, there's a point where I'm sure that this will get painted by many as another example of typical liberal-leaning Hollywood canceling a show that is for the other side, that leans right. And, those are politics, for example. Those are politics that I don't particularly agree with, but, I'm not going to argue that a show that relates more to people that have political leanings than I do shouldn't be on the air, just as, West Wing was on the air for 7 years. I agreed more with that. I'm not gonna sit here and say, like, Roseanne, I had a lot of issues with some of the things that they did on that show or said on that show, but I'm not gonna sit here and say, well, it doesn't have a right to be on the air because I don't agree with it. But this was over the line.
Definitely. And like so racist, like you're saying, Dan, that I'm not comfortable even saying what the tweet was on air. Yeah, you can definitely look it up. I think that you're right, Billy, because I was thinking like this show makes them so much money, but you're right. In long term, this is the smarter business move for them as well. I wonder what level of performer on the show you would have had to have been if it wasn't Roseanne, if it was somebody else who tweeted this on the show. Would they have canceled the show? Or is it just because
they just would
it's
have been
her,
fired.
it's her name, it's her brand, it's her show? Is that?
And they already had sort of run into issues with this before. I mean, she tweets and says controversial things, and they kind of already said like, well, that's her thing, that's not our thing, which is this
But
very
I've never
naive,
seen one
stupid way to
that
think it's a
bad
network.
before.
Yeah.
Did she delete it, or is it
She
still?
deleted,
deleted it.
She was like, my joke was in poor taste.
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah.
How did you not, even again, not from a moral standpoint, from a business standpoint, how are you a businesswoman in this industry for that long? You type that out and you don't look at that and think, my whole world could collapse if I tweet this. Definitely not worth it. How does that not? How?
Well, I mean, right now it's a gamble where I think right now it's the theater end of social politics right now, and I think she took a gamble on that, where she can say, "I'll tweet this, and everybody will love me, and everyone will yell about it for a few days, and then."
I think she's
Things will
just
go
straight
down.
up racist.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
sorry.
no, she is.
I don't think it was theater. I think that is just straight up
I'm talking
racism.
more. I'm talking more
sorry.
on the business end.
Did you guys
Yeah.
catch
I think-
it when there were still comments on it?
No.
Like half of them were like, "Ha, you go, girlfriend." I was
Yeah.
like, "Ha."
Yeah. Michelle Wolf can be hired to perform at a comedy show and actually say setups and punchlines, and everyone's like, "Ah!"
Yeah.
This had no punchline or setup. It was just a bad, horrible sentence.
I mean, this is going to become political football, as everything does now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure this is going to be, painted by different parties as it's going to be celebrated far too much by one side, and it's going to be certainly condemned and taken out of context far too much by the other side, and it's just going to become more yelling. But I think the point of it is, when you get down to it, is in the social media age, I think so many people think that they're invincible, and if they're successful, they can do whatever they want and say whatever they want. And in a weird way, it goes all the way back to what we've been talking about. It's just like, this is the environment that has to change, and this is another thing. It's like, people have to be held accountable. There is a line, and if you cross that line, I don't care who you are, I don't care how successful your show is, you're gone.
Yeah.
You don't get to do that anymore, because there has to be a line somewhere that somebody draws. And I'm shocked. I think they might have given her too much leverage already, because, again, like I said, some of the stuff that has been done on her show, I think, is a little, we're worried that the Muslim family next door are terrorists. Like, beyond the fact that I just think that's kind of politically, that's a hacky premise. Like, welcome to, what is this, 2002?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too, because even out the gate, you can almost every episode of Roseanne, at least the ones that I've seen of the reboot. Roxy, you've been saying you've been following it. It's the number one show on TV. But you can side by side them with episodes that made the original series stand out, and the original series really spoke to people. You can side by side them, and they're night and day. Like creatively, it's already such a different show, which is disappointing because it's definitely not the voice that the show had in the 90s.
I was actually really happy, though, that this show was on air. I don't get it, and I've watched it every week, and it doesn't speak to me. I don't think it's particularly funny because I think it's a little rude. But I'm glad that it's there because I know people really like it and think it's funny, and it speaks a different perspective. And that's art that they're doing. They're putting something together. It's scripted. It's showing another side that's so different than an actress tweeting something that's incredibly racist. Those two things, like, talk about night and day.
Well, what I'm wondering is, because this was such a quick eject button that, like...
There's no other choice.
Well, no, there's no other choice, but it's like, given that I feel like there's been a lead up to this and they've been waiting, like I've got to wonder, like what was the thinking at ABC when, I mean, she's been tweeting similar stuff for maybe not quite at an 11, but for 10 years.
Yes.
What was the gamble on hiring her versus, like clearly, I'm sure for the last several weeks it's been like, what's she gonna do this week?
Well, I do wonder, especially after this whole thing, if now, and this could already be happening, I'm just not aware of it, but if there's real enforceable social media guidelines within contracts and can you ensure, just as like if your movie star dies and the production is insured because that movie it cannot be finished, can you now do something where should she be ejected or someone be ejected and they are the lead, like God forbid if like Chris Evans did something ridiculous and had to be ejected and you've just lost a big part of your Avengers, is there an insurable way to do it? Is there something in their contracts where now they can be penalized for, I don't know, social dumbness?
Right, yeah.
I bet not in hers because I think she wouldn't sign it.
Well, clearly not, but I wonder if this is going to start to be like, guys, it's not just Roseanne. There's been a lot of people over the last couple of years who made some real bonehead, really ignorant statements, and it's like we can't attach our cart to this horse without some sort of insurance that they're not going to tank it. I mean, look at all the money in the world. I mean, that was a small miracle that even got out, especially in the time frame. Yeah. This is happening more and more and more, and I'm wondering if the businesses are now going to start to take a little bit more control.
Let's make a side note, too. I think there's sort of a long history in Hollywood of morality clauses and contracts, especially, sort of in the olden days, which I don't know enough off the top of my head to really just spout on right now, but that could be a cool video. So bookmark, maybe? Because that could be a really cool thing to just make a special feature about. Sorry, always thinking ahead.
Yeah, write that down, Joe.
That's the key to my success.
There is absolutely zero validity to this, and I want to just say that so clearly. But you guys know I watch a lot of television, so I'm a conspiracy theorist. Like 24 is stuck in my brain. Do you think there's any way that she did something horrible on set? She knew the show was going to get canceled, so she put out this tweet that they would cancel it because of this?
Nah.
She ruined her because she's ruined her brand. Well, no, actually, I was just about to say, actually, she's going to be a martyr now. Her brand is going to
be stronger.
Yeah, she'll be a martyr for the
everybody
cause.
That she pissed off, they weren't her.
Okay.
That's not fair. Yeah. That's not fair to say, so I won't say that. She definitely ruined her brand mainstream. And I think that, however, like I said, there will be some people that will take this as an attack, and she'll be celebrated in those circles, and this is just going to become the same circular argument that's been going on for.
And it comes around. Comes around. Hey, you guys.
Hey, Joe.
You want to talk about Han Solo?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's talk about Han Solo a little bit, guys. We had Memorial Day. I think everyone's seen it now. Billy, you've seen it. Roxy, you've seen it.
Yeah.
Joe, you've seen it. Dan, you've seen it.
I have.
I know you're going to be hitting this from more of a box office perspective later in the day on Charting with Dan. So this morning we just kind of wanted to do more of just a roundup on general thoughts. Did we like the movie? What did we not like? Just sort of overall takes, whether they be hot or cool Billy?
One thing I talked about with Dan in the spoiler review, but now that I know you're a big Star Wars fan, I don't really know where you land on the Star Wars spectrum of things, but I do now thinking more. Oh, by the way, this is spoiler. I know it's in the thing, but I just want to be.
Oh yeah, so many.
Yeah, just want to be very clear. Thinking
Spoiler:
more
Roseanne
about,
has left Star Wars.
About that Darth Maul thing at the end.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, are they getting to a point where they want to cater more to the person that does watch all the cartoons, or because it does. I can see how jarring it would be if you're like. I thought the same. If I didn't know any better, Dan, I would have thought the same thing. Like, is that a similar species or is that the actual guy? Because he looks a little different. But then you see the mechanical legs, and I guess you can infer it's the same guy. But
and they really rub it in.
The double-sided lightsaber.
Right?
It's
yeah.
like, it's Darth Maul.
Here's my thing.
Okay. Gotcha.
Like, I wonder if that's the direction that they were thinking of going, and now they're like, wait a second, maybe this isn't the best way to do it, to cater to the, like, super fan. Whereas, like, in Infinity War, you know, it does something where it's like, if you don't know what's happening, that's on you. Mm-hmm. But I feel like Solo kind of did that at the end, but it's like, if you don't know what's happening, that's kind of on you, but kind of not really on you at all.
Well, I was kind of two minds about it. My first reaction was I started laughing because I remember what I said last week on SJU, and you went, "Woo!"
Yeah, Joe was like, well, I don't really think they're ever going to acknowledge anything that ever happened in the animated series. I was like, oh boy, you don't know.
So on one hand, I was like, damn, okay, because no one's done that. You know, I joke a lot about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on this show, and I feel like in comments sometimes people are like, why are you so hard on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? I really like that show. I'm harder on Marvel for not giving it its due and giving them a spot at the big kids table. Same with, you know, Defenders and stuff like that. So, you know, Star Wars now is the first franchise to really kind of go the other way around. And it's like, okay, now we're going to bring in the supplementary stuff and we're going to make that important. And on one hand, I was like, that's awesome. That's really the first time I can think of that they've done that. But then after that sort of initial sort of like, whoa, we're going to hear about Darth Maul and how he was a crime lord for a long time. And, you know, but on the other hand, I already know how Darth Maul was like a crime lord for a long time and the things that he did. His story's already over. So, you know, I think people's reaction is, are we going to get a Darth Maul movie? Are we going to explore more of the Darth Maul stuff? But it becomes the same problem, I think, of a Han Solo movie or a Boba Fett movie, where it's like, I know these arcs. And you can fill in some cool gaps, but that's really all it kind of is just filler.
What didn't people understand about the Darth Maul part of the film? What is it that people were missing?
I think it's just like,
it's not that I misunderstood anything. It's just I knew that he was in the animated series, and I knew that he had, you know, metal legs. Now that was about it. It just seemed
unnecessary,
weird, and out of complete left field. And again, in a series that is, they're spinning these off as stories,
as solo films.
Now you're doing this whole world building thing at the end with Darth Maul, and you know, she flies off to go join Darth Maul, and it's like, so now we're doing a whole thing now. It seemed like a really weird random thing to just throw in at the end. And again, like I don't know. I've said my piece on Solo. It's just like,
sure,
it's fun. I enjoyed it for what it was. Like, kind of, but other parts of it I really rolled my eyes at. The one thing I forgot to bring up the other day was before the terrible name thing. When he sees the recruitment station, like the recruitment station's music is the Darth Vader theme, and it's like, so now that's canon.
But it's like in a major,
it's like
instead of a minor.
Right, it's like the Empire. That's just the Empire's theme music. Like, that's the kind of, just like.
You know, I read an article.
Like, stupid.
I read an article this morning, and I almost put it in the rundown, but I guess the one thing that sold Disney brass on doing the Solo movie completely, Lawrence Kasdan said, he's like, yeah, it's going to be about Solo and like how he got his name. Like, he's going to go up to a guy at like an immigration station and say, I'm by myself, I have no people. And Disney was like, sold. It's like, really? The one part that even I really like Solo, and I'm like, oof, get that out.
Loved that part of the movie. I loved loved it. Everybody,
Striar.
I was in one of the critics screenings, which are, I hate watching these kind of movies in one of those screenings because everybody hates everything, and I loved this movie.
That's not true at all. It's not true at all.
It's very not true. You're all right. But it just feels like that way sometimes. Like when you like something that's stupid and then everybody around you's like, ugh, and you're like, I guess I'm stupid. That's how I felt for so much of this movie. Like during that part of it, when it was like, oh, we'll call you Solo. And I was like, yeah, like fist bumped, and everybody around was like, it was so painful and cringeworthy for everybody else. Dan, you are right. It is not true.
Listen, everyone, I respect your opinion, but that was by far the worst case scenario. I couldn't have dreamed up a worse way for them to do it.
That was so
If
fun.
I had 3 weeks to think of a worse way to give Han Solo his name, I don't think I could have done worse. And they had 2 shots at it, and they still got it wrong.
What if he was such a great pilot because he flew really low to the ground? So they're like, we're going to call you Han Solo.
I think that's better.
After you
think that's better.
After you had set me up with how bad the name thing was going to be, I went in thinking that Beckett was going to be like, so you're going to join the crew? And then he was going to like look at Han Solo appraisingly and go, nah, you're more of a Solo guy. And then they were going to just go on Han Solo's eyes.
Yeah, that's not too far off.
And it was wonderful.
Too far off.
I'm the only person who likes that
Look,
moment.
I love that.
I don't know.
I really, really, really like that movie, but even I was like, oof, no, course correct. This is 10 minutes in. Course correct now. Don't keep doing this.
Mm-hmm. But we should mention it opened far below projections.
Solo.
We're the first ones to make that.
Yes.
Which we will talk about. But
Tolkien white guys.
This is a movie that 3 weeks ago, the tracking, which I think now between Infinity War breaking all the records and this, the tracking is useless. Tracking is a guess, and it's a bad guess because again, you can't track. Like I always say, you can't track enthusiasm, high or low.
What do they use to track? Is it pre-sales or?
It's just pre-sale, which again, pre-sales. Remember that story we did about Fandango? Like the Solo pre-sales are twice what we got for Black Panther. Again, those numbers are useless.
Yeah.
They're meaningless.
Yeah.
They don't mean anything.
They use a lot of things. They use averages based on the
Guesses.
Star's box office earnings. In this
Social
case,
media
that's
impressions.
Yeah, social media impressions, the franchise overall earnings.
Yeah.
This movie cast a little less so because it's not major names, but like, if it's going to be a Tom Cruise movie, they're going to go back and be like, okay, well, these 15 made this amount, and sort of.
Who is the biggest draw in this film? Is it Donald Glover?
Star Wars,
Chewie.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
Chewie.
3 weeks ago, the story was that this was going to break the Memorial Day record for debuts. Like, this is going to beat Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. Our tracking says it's going to make between $130 and $150 million, and it didn't even make the top 5
Yeah.
as far as Memorial Day debuts. So again,
What did Pirates make? Do you remember?
like 139 million, I think, was the mark to beat. Which again, they were just like, it's going to do it. It could go higher. It's like no, it's so. I think the story becomes, why, and also like who's setting these expectations and why are they doing that? Because it doesn't really mean, and even when we do charting, when I make a guess, I'm very upfront about the fact that like this is a guess. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm sitting right here today with my information saying I guess this is about it, but I don't know what this is, and I think that part of it's the media thing where they take these tracking numbers and they say tracking says this, so then 18 stories come out that say like Solo's going to make $130 million on opening weekend, when it's a complete BS number just pulled out of the air. So then that becomes the expectation, and when it doesn't meet that expectation, then the thing rolls back into like, why didn't it meet expectations? When who knows what the original expectation should have been.
Do you think that number actually affects how many people do go to the movies? Like if they hear it's going to be 130 million, they're like, oh, I want to be one of those.
I think that's the hope.
Dollars.
I think that's the hope from the studios, is that they'll get it into your head that like, I got to be a part of this boulder roll, of this thing gaining momentum. It's interesting to me because the same sort of people that put together the tracking numbers also are usually in charge of the exit story, which is how we have a record getting broken every 3 days in movies, because they have to sort of figure out a way to create a narrative and a story around their exit polls, I guess, if you will. So in this case, it was interesting to me because this is one of those rare occasions where social media really ran with the exit story, as opposed to we didn't hear about records being broken or like it went a little under, but here are the reasons why it's still great, because it performed really well in Indonesia and Japan's killing
overseas.
it. Yeah.
It did. It really did not do well. I mean, again, last week they're saying it's going to have a $300 million global debut, and it did half that. So I think the question becomes, one, where are people getting these numbers from? But again, it's just their best guess. But the other one, which I'm working on now, is like, why not only here, everywhere? I mean, China, they knew it wasn't going to do in China. It was third place this weekend in China.
Any guesses?
Well, Star Wars does not perform in China, but this was even on the low bar that you set for Star Wars in China. This was far below anything that any other Star Wars movie had done. So many of Star Wars grosses are usually supposed to be linked to overseas, and you're not going to have that on this one. So, and it's lower here. I don't know. I have like map and yarn and pens and strings, because I really do think, like, when people like, what's the silver bullet? I think there were about 8 silver bullets that all played a factor. Some of them Disney controlled, some of them Disney didn't control. I think, to be fair to Disney, not that they need it, I think this was a self-inflicted wound in some ways, and I think in other ways there were some things that were completely out of their control that contributed to the movie underperforming.
Which we will hear a lot more about.
Later. Yeah.
I do wonder, though, like, not that they're anywhere similar, but just kind of the old question of, like, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? How many
79
divisive or, thank you, or not greatly received movies does it take before people turn off your franchise? We kind of watched it a little bit with the DCEU. There were some fans who were not pleased with Batman v Superman and then Suicide Squad, and seemed like Wonder Woman wasn't quite enough to help the box office for Justice League. No, I really like Justice League. I think Star Wars is a much bigger... I thought you were pointing for a second. I have no peripheral vision.
No, I needed to
but I know Star Wars is a much bigger beast, and it's not like one divisive movie is going to bring it down, or even two. But I do wonder at what point they're like, guys, we got to make sure our roadmap is steady before we really start to.
But every movie's divisive now. I mean, 90% of the big movies that come out is one side yelling at the other, whether the general audience liked it or not. So a part of me is like, yes, you should listen to your fan base. 100% you should. But which ones should Disney listen to?
Right.
Should they listen to the ones that said The Last Jedi was the best movie they ever made? Or should they listen to the ones that said The Last Jedi was the worst movie they ever made? Should they listen to the ones that loved this movie and said it was the most fun Star Wars movie in the world?
Especially
or should they listen to the ones
scene.
that said this was the worst Star Wars movie?
But there's empirical data to prove that the people who were rallying for Last Jedi like went and saw it again or didn't see it again. I mean, there's got to be a way that's like, Solo may be divisive, but the proof's in the pudding. It's in the box office, and it's not scoring. So you have to kind of take that into consideration.
But audiences gave it, I mean, every other Star Wars movie got an A. This one got an A-. So that says that people liked it, but not as much as the other ones. Solo. That played a bit of a factor. But apart from going to every angry Twitter user, knocking on their door and saying, did you really boycott Solo, or did you just put the hashtag out? And
like Jay and Silent Bob did that one time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they have the money to do it, so I guess they could just canvass the entire country and figure out who actually didn't go. But, I mean, I think that The Last Jedi played a part in the sense that there was probably part of the core fan base that didn't go for whatever reason, and there are so many, some good, some bad. But I think that if you're Disney and you're trying to structure your future based solely on fan reaction, you're going to drive yourself crazy. It'd be like us trying to do Honest trailers based on the comments that we get on every Honest trailer. We hear every Honest trailer that we do is the best we've ever done and the worst we've ever done. It's this is as good as the old stuff, and you guys have been going downhill for 3 years. Unsubscribe. Like, you can't.
That's when I started working here.
Yeah, exactly. It was a steep decline when showed up. But no, it's seriously like. I don't know how you do it, because every movie now is the best movie ever, worst movie ever.
Yeah.
And everyone's yelling at each other, and they're all yelling at you and telling you what you did right/wrong on every single movie in the world. And I don't know what you do if you're Disney, other than I think there are some things, like not releasing a Star Wars movie 5 months after another Star Wars movie. And a lot of people's like, well, Marvel does it. Like, no, they don't. Marvel releases... Marvel is one super franchise, and inside of that franchise, there are 8 mini franchises. It's just like, well, I don't understand why Solo didn't do well after the 5 months. Marvel does 3 movies a year. Marvel releases 3 movies a year. One of them was a buddy comedy starring Thor. One of them was an origin story about Black Panther, and one of them was a superhero team-up movie with Infinity War. Those are 3 completely different kinds of movies inside one giant franchise. Some people say, like, well, it obviously can't be Star Wars fatigue because Marvel does 3 movies a year. Marvel releases 3 movies a year, but they're not all the same, and I think that Solo was a lot more samey to the other Star Wars movies than the Marvel movies are samey to each other. Mm-hmm. So I think people try to simplify these things, and there's no simple answer to any of it.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. It's a lot of different factors. Yeah. It's like the fatigue thing, sort of an oversimplification. So is Boycott Solo. So yeah, it's a whole bunch of different stuff.
Did you like it, Joe?
I did. So I was talking to Dan. I liked it like more than I liked Guardians 2, if that makes any sense. Where like I enjoyed Guardians 2. I will probably maybe watch Guardians 2 a couple more times in my life, but won't like constantly go after it. Like I've already watched Guardians 1 plenty of times, but probably won't watch Guardians 2 all that much ever again unless someone happens to be like, hey, you know what we're doing today? We're having a beer and we're going to watch Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I think it probably sits somewhere in there for me. One thing I wanted to ask you guys on Solo before we sort of move on to other things is, part of the Star Wars strategy, the Disney strategy for Star Wars, is this franchise now has a lot of moving parts, whether it be Forces of Destiny, or whether it be a live-action TV show, or whether it be the new animated series, whether it be the Marvel Comics. And a big part of those is the introduction of all of these new side characters and stuff like that. So of these new characters that we met, or new things we explored in Star Wars, because they're all going to have their mini-series or appearances, you know, here or there, who stood out to you guys? Like, who would you want to see? You know you're going to see them all somewhere, but who do you really want to see, whether it be in a show or in a comic, sort of explored more?
From Solo.
From Solo. Mm-hmm. Like, did you dig L3? I know L3 answered an Honest Trailer question for us, because we hit on droids or slaves a bunch in Honest Trailers.
Yeah, and so did the movie.
Yeah.
A lot.
A whole bunch.
A whole bunch. They killed off the one that I thought Tandy Newton.
Val.
Yeah, Val.
Val was
like
really cool.
I thought that I liked her character, and it was like, you have a great actress like Tandy Newton. Like she's a really strong actor. And
just start tuning into Westworld, Dan.
Yeah, we'll see. And they got rid of her like in the first act. I was really surprised. I was like, really? Mm-hmm. Like I still can't get over that.
I honestly would have switched her and Beckett.
I would have switched her and Woody Harrelson. I don't need another lone gunman, careful who you trust kid type that I would have preferred to have seen her. Mm-hmm. But since that's not an option, I don't know. Like I said, this was a very Billy kind of went whoa when I said this in the spoiler review, but I'm like, I still agree with it, even with more days to think about it. You take the name Solo away from it, and this was a second-rate space adventure. Like movie. This was a you know, like it was a completely average, generic heist type movie, but the kind that gets way more complicated in the third act than you ever really cared about, and you walk out of it going like, They just put Solo in it. So nothing really stood out to me from the movie other than the fact that
so Kira.
Chewie in it. So yeah, put me down for Kira, I guess.
Roxy, who'd you walk out being kind of like,
I think probably the fan fave would be Donald Glover as Lando, but I don't know what that would look like. A whole movie, maybe a short film somewhere. Something like that.
Star Wars one shot.
I definitely didn't walk away from this movie being like, I am interested in following this person on this path. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, good night. Like, we closed the curtain on that. And I liked the movie, but I was like, and now
we're done.
And now I'm done.
Sure. Mm-hmm. I think I'd go with Val, too. I think Woody Harrelson getting offed in the first 4 minutes of your movie would have been a pretty baller, like Sean Bean in Game of Thrones kind of move.
Yeah.
And then you sort of run with Danny Newton. But What do I know? What do I know?
Someone had to throw Han Solo's blaster at him, so I guess it had to be.
Yeah, it had to be Woody. Billy, did you dig anybody?
I mean, I don't want to see a whole movie about it, but like as far as a new character, I was like, oh, I liked that character. I really liked the Jon Favreau alien that like was piloting the ship over the train and then got shot.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't remember his name, but I liked him too.
I think
liked him a lot.
It was Monkey Forearms.
Yes, that was
Nailed it.
That's what I call him in my head.
Yeah.
He's an original George Lucas character
Yes.
that was in some of his notes, and he's
Yeah.
like, I'm calling this guy Monkey Forearms.
he was just like really like sweet, and then like died fairly realistically for like a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It was a bummer though.
Like a slow kind of like, I'm going to keep going, but I think I'm dying. Like, it was a bummer, but I really liked his character. I thought it was, I don't know.
We had to
I
kill
don't
him though.
wanna-
We didn't have space for him.
I know. I don't want to see a whole movie of him, but if he were to
Short
pop
film.
up somewhere else.
Maybe
in
he
someone
pops up in
else's thing,
Boba Fett.
That would be
Everyone
weird.
else
How?
probably.
How
Yeah,
would,
everyone else probably
How would
will.
that happen? Monkey forearms and Boba
Takes
Fett.
place right before. This
They
is
were
going to be
college roommates.
Boba Fett's a prequel to Solo.
Now I get it.
All right, guys, let's get out of a long time ago and come back to this galaxy. We've got a couple quick stories to get through. It is a long show. Let's jump through this. We're going to talk about Alan Rickman a little bit. In a collection of letters that were released for auction, there were moments where Alan Rickman didn't appear to enjoy playing Snape. In one particular letter, producer David Heyman wrote to him, "Thank you so much for making Harry Potter 2 a success. I know at times you're very frustrated, but please know that you are an integral part of the films and you are brilliant." In another note titled "Inside Snape's Head," Rickman wrote, "It's as if David Yates has decided." I don't do a good enough Rickman to do the line. You do a
okay.
decent.
As if David Yates has decided. I can't do it.
I can't do it justice. It's as if David Yates has decided that this is not important in the scheme of things, i.e. teen audience appeal. Does it ever change your all's view of a performance or a movie if you know that the actor, either had problems on set in the making of it, wasn't fond of the movie? I know that Tombstone for me was apparently a nightmare. Someone had to step in and finish directing it, and I love that movie.
It's a great movie.
Or Alec Guinness in Star Wars.
Yeah, that one's always a bummer to me. Just
That-
because like I love Obi-Wan so much, to just know that guy's like, this is dumb. Like, I was on, bridge over the, like I was in great movies and now I'm in this stupid Star Wars. Like, it's a little bit of a bummer. That being said, he came back for the next two, so it couldn't have been that big of a bummer, right?
Yeah, I mean that
like a
check.
day.
Yeah, for like a day.
And he got to sit.
Yeah, and he got
Yeah.
to sit.
So,
as
like,
JT
you
does.
have to remember, well, we're watching this movie one time, one day, or 5 times over a year, or whatever it is. They're living it every single day. It's their job. So sometimes you come home from work at the end of the day and you're like, I don't
What am I doing?
like today, and Crafty did not have the bagel I wanted, like whatever it is, and you get annoyed. But it's a love-hate situation. Unless an actor comes out and is like, I hated every second that I was on this set. Everybody tortured me. I never want to be a part of this again. Then it kind of taints it. But if somebody one time and is like, I don't know about this. Okay, I feel that way about jobs like other normal people do. I'm sure you guys do too.
Also, I'm sorry we
Never
didn't
hear
have
it.
that
Screen
bagel.
Junkies. Yeah, and where was my bagel? But like that happens because it's a job.
Sure.
And you're
Well-
going to work, and people treat you different ways when you're on set.
And the timing too. We don't know when, like Harry Potter 2, for example. I could see Alan Rickman after Harry Potter 2 being like, "What am I doing here? Like,
Yeah.
I'm a classically trained British actor. I've done Shakespeare. I've done, and you've got me here playing the 12th lead, most important character. And I think, Harry Potter 2 came out before the end game was revealed in this whole thing, before anybody knew what Snape was, what his role was going to be.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the first 2 movies, he's there to be like, "Oh, you kids."
Yeah, I would have gotten away with it.
exactly.
Why
Like,
I oughta.
I could
Yeah.
see too. After 2, he might be like, why'd you get me?
Yeah.
And so for that, I think probably that's a producer saying like, hey, trust me, we're gonna need, because you needed an actor of his caliber in the later films to make that as impactful as it was. And but I can also see Snape did get a lot of stuff cut from the books. A lot of his character was cut, so I can also see Alan Rickman being like, oh, there's some really good stuff I don't get to do.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What's interesting, we've always seen the positive spin version of this from like Rowling and the people in charge of the Harry Potter franchise, where they're like, when we first brought this project to Alan Rickman, we told him, oh man, it's gonna be. Wait, he's the anchor of the whole thing. He's the hero of the whole story. You just wait. And so, but it is kind of interesting to see from his point of view, like even supposedly knowing, because he has been told, he has said in interviews that he was told that that's the end game. But knowing that's the end game, but still from day to day, sometimes being like, let's get to the fireworks factory a little bit, because I'm on day 6 of you cut a whole bunch of stuff from the novel, and I'm just still going like, are we going to stick the landing?
I think the thing that people forget is like when they think about Alec Guinness in Star Wars, and even Rickman on Harry Potter, is like when people think about being in the movie, they picture like Alec Guinness on set with a lightsaber in the Millennium Falcon, and it's like, how could you not find that amazing? Like, think back to if you're Alec Guinness, you've been in the bridge on the River Kwai, you were in Lawrence of Arabia. Now you find yourself in a plywood spaceship with a 7-foot tall guy in a carpet suit and another English dude stuffed into a gold robot suit. Space isn't there. The lightsaber isn't there. You've just got George Lucas.
The John Williams music is not there.
You've got George Lucas giving you no direction, surrounded by amateur actors who've never been in anything, and all these people in rubber masks. And like, yeah, of course Alec Guinness is going to have a moment where he's just like, what am I doing? Yeah. Where have I fallen? Is this the end of my career? Like, you don't know. You don't know in these movies. I can especially see being on Star Wars and just being like sweltering in the desert, and George Lucas being like, "Oh, this is where the sand people come with their big sticks, and then you get this little robot over here to roll up to you, and then you talk about the Force, and it's just like, what have I done?
Yeah.
What is my life? I can see that.
You know,
they're not in the finished movie. They're Alan Rickman's on a corner of the Hogwarts set, and people saying like, "Don't worry, it's a big thing."
Yeah, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. We promise. We're gonna get you there. Meanwhile, he's just watching take after take of them being like, "Now take your shirt off slower," so that teenagers will freak out at this river scene, which they did. That was a very uncomfortable screening for me when I saw Deathly Hallows and they all like fall off the dragon into the water. Oh. I was just like, oh, I'm surrounded by middle school girls that are just shrieking.
Shrieks.
I should not be here. Should not be in the
very
theater.
Different screenings, you and I.
Mine was rough. I was like, that was the first time I felt old. I was like, these kids shouldn't be up past midnight. It's late. Let's wrap on a on a fan question. Molson 1015 asks, what pre-internet movie would have caused the most disagreement and arguing online if it were released now?
Return of the Jedi.
Because they're siblings?
100. No, the Ewoks. I think you would have had the same arguments with the tone of it, with the Emperor, with everything. I think Return of the Jedi would have been just as divisive as any other Star Wars movie is today.
I'm with you there. I mean, I think people would have been like, they just kissed like 3 years ago in the last one, and now they're siblings. Billy?
I'm going to go with a different Lucasfilm one. I think Temple of Doom would have been... A lot of people have been like, the hell is this? It's not globe spanning like Raiders was. It's much darker. I personally think it's a lot like meaner, much more mean-spirited. It's gets a little bit more, like supernatural than the last one. I think, much like Last Jedi, half the people have been like, I love this darker, different adventure, and half the people would have been like, the next one better course correct, which it kind of did with Last Crusade. It kind of took it back to the other one. So I think Temple of Doom would have been
that's
a
a solid answer.
one.
Roxy?
I have no idea. Probably something that was like similar to a Roseanne situation, like some stupid comedy that did something like inappropriate and racist. You go back and watch old movies right now and you're like, like, I don't want that. So probably something we're not even thinking of.
Yeah,
Porkies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah, Revenge of the Nerds.
Oh my God.
Like, are you for real
Big.
now?
Oh, there would have been so many think pieces written about Big.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. 100% Big. I did not expect us to get to Big on this question, but I think you're 100% right, guys. I think that's our show. We've been here a while.
Yours?
Do what?
What was yours?
What was mine? I'm going. You know what? I don't know if I have one. Big. Animal House probably would have been a rough one. I agree. Like most 80s, 90s comedies, Hangover wasn't pre-internet, but even like looking back a little bit, like Bradley Cooper's like third or fourth line in that internet is just like screaming a homophobic slur at somebody, and it's like, yes, best R-rated comedy of all time.
Also, another really mean-spirited.
Yes, yeah,
movie,
absolutely,
you know?
absolutely. Not to say that it's a
JT.
worthless piece of trash or anything like that. I'm not
Soul Man?
trashing
Soul
it, but
Man.
Soul Man. Oh,
Soul
God.
Man.
Oh, yeah.
yep.
Yikes.
I've never even seen Soul Man.
That is C. Thomas Howell, and he goes to college on a minority scholarship by pretending to be black.
Oh,
Yes.
no.
Complete with makeup. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a good
all
one,
makeup.
JTE. That's you hit the nail right on the head there.
Yeah.
That's
White
Yep.
girls?
White chicks?
White chicks.
I
That's
was
what I'm
gonna
Don't
saying.
say,
take that
white
away from
girls?
my wife.
Oh dear.
Wait, which movie's White Girls and which movie's White Chicks?
Which one's White Girls? I've only ever heard of White Chicks.
Yeah.
Okay, it's White Chicks then. The Wayans brothers
Yeah.
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 Don't take that away from her. That and Sorority Boys.
one. Okay, I'm
And
sorry. I take
Joanna
those.
Man.
Ladybugs.
Sensing a trend.
Your wife likes a very specific genre of film.
Yeah, she definitely Tu Wong Fu. She loves all the She has
All
a
right,
taste.
guys. Well, that's our show. Check out Charting with Dan today.
We work on it now.
This afternoon. Make sure you check out the Honest Trailer for every Christopher Nolan film. The Honest Trailer commentary is up right here on News so you can see sort of what didn't make the cut, which wasn't a lot.
Not a lot.
Yeah,
No,
but
not much at all.
If you want to just hear us walk even more of a tightrope on talking about Christopher Nolan on the internet, make sure you check it out. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.